Hey everyone, on today's episode of Everyday Vet, we're going to talk about litter box problems, specifically cats that are pooping outside of the litter box. We're going to troubleshoot litter boxes as well as the litter itself. I'm Dr. Meggs, and this is Everyday Vet. So in this episode, I'm going to focus primarily on cats pooping outside of the litter box. The reason being for that is that if your cat is pooping outside of the box, it usually indicates that there's a behavioral issue. So maybe your cat doesn't like the litter, maybe it doesn't like the box, things like that. It doesn't usually indicate an underlying medical concern. Of course, there's always exceptions, but for the most part, we're talking about a behavioral preference type issue. Now, when it comes to peeing outside of the litter box, we do have a higher likelihood of potential underlying medical issues. So we're not really focusing on that in today's episode. I do have an episode dedicated to inappropriate urination in cats. So if you're having that problem, I recommend that you bounce over to that episode and take a look at some of the concerns that I address in that one. So today we're really talking about preferences for the actual litter as well as preferences for the box and how to troubleshoot issues with your cat. Now, also keep in mind, please, that cats tend to be incredibly picky animals. So guidelines for one cat may not necessarily apply to all of them. So sometimes, I know it can be really frustrating, but we often have to kind of play around with different options and find what your individual cat likes best. And that being said, I'm providing overall guidelines for today and troubleshooting skills so that way you can kind of play around with things at home. But keep in mind that if your cat likes the litter box it's using, likes the litter, isn't having any issues, that's okay. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry if you're not following all of the recommendations that I'm making today, because not every cat is going to be as picky. So today we're going to primarily discuss things that come into play more so for the cats that are a little bit pickier and that we have to cater to their preferences a little bit more than the average cat. So when it comes to litter boxes, there are a couple of key things that we have to keep in mind. First thing that I like to bring out is the N+1 rule. N being the number of cats. So that just means that if you have one cat, you want to have two litter boxes. So 1 + 1 is 2. If you have two cats, you want to have 3 litter boxes. So the N+ rule basically just says that you want to always have one more box than the number of cats that you have in your household. That way your cats always have an option of which box to go to, even if there's another cat in the household that's maybe guarding the box. Also, having that variability in the boxes allows for more choice. So if you're having more litter boxes in your house and you're having problems with a cat using them, I would recommend maybe offering a litter box buffet. That's what I like to call it when we introduce a couple of different types of boxes, because there's so many different options out there for specific litter boxes. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper in that. But the idea being is we want to introduce variability until we find what your cat likes. And then once we find what the cat likes, we want to stick with that. So keep in mind N+1, so one more box than the number of cats. And if you're having troubles, offer a litter box buffet. So provide them with choices, find out which box your cat goes to. The other thing to consider too is where you're putting your boxes. We really want to make sure that the boxes are easy for the cat to get to. So this kind of comes into play with the levels in your house rule. So if you have 2 levels in your house, you want to have at least 2 boxes, so one on each level. That way, no matter where your cat is, it has easy access to a box. Similarly, we want to make sure that we're putting the box in a desirable location. So you don't want to stick that box in a back storage closet. If you don't want to go back there, your cat probably doesn't want to either. You want to make it easy for them. So for example, if you have a high traffic living room area, you probably don't want to put the box there because that might be a little bit too intimidating for the cat, but you also don't want to put it in a random back hallway away from everything. I find that a bathroom tends to be a really good compromise. You're still going to a location that's easy access. There are people around sometimes, but it's not going to be overwhelming with like high noise amounts and everything, but it's still going to be a convenient location. So if your bathroom's big enough to put a litter box in it, I would recommend choosing that as one of the locations for your box. Similarly, we want to make sure that the box that you're choosing is the appropriate size for your cat too. So this rule is the 1.5 times rule. So you want to make sure that your box is 1.5 times the length of your cat. By doing that, you're providing your cat enough room to turn around in the actual litter box. So it's got to be easy to get to, but it's also got to be easy for your cat to use. If you have a 15-pound cat, if you give it this tiny little litter box, it's going to be hard for it to get into, and it's not going to have much room to move around, so it's not necessarily going to be ideal. You want to make sure that they have room to get into the box, turn around, and do their thing without feeling confined. This really takes into play too if you have a cat that's maybe pooping right outside of the litter box. A lot of times I find that when cats are pooping right along that border of the litter box, it's usually that they're trying to use the box. So they're usually standing in the actual litter box, but when they're pooping, it's kind of falling out over the edge. That implies that you might need a wider box or a longer one, but basically you want it big enough that your cat can still turn and posture and have the poop land in the box as opposed to over the edge. So if you're having problem with poop around the outsides of the box, you might want to just increase the overall size of the box. Keep it in the same location though, because if it's right by the box, that indicates that your cat is okay with that location at least. We might just need to change up the box a little bit. So now that we've discussed the actual litter box, it's time to take a closer look at the litter itself. Now, key thing to remember is you want the litter to be 2 to 2.5 inches deep. This gives your cat plenty to dig around in and enough cushion, but without being so deep that it feels like it's wading through sand. Average 2 to 2.5 inches, but keep in mind that some cats do have different preferences. Now, when it comes to the litter itself too, we also have to consider that there are a bunch of different types out there, and they have a lot of different textures. So if you look at this litter, it's fairly fine granules. This is going to have a softer feel on the feet. This is actually a clumping litter. Most cats tend to have a preference for clumping unscented litter. Cats are much more sensitive to smells than we are, so some of them might be turned off by a strong fragrance. So if you stick to a clumping non-scented, you're going to please most cats. However, again, there are going to be outliers. So just like we discussed before with the litter box buffet, you can actually offer a litter buffet as well. This is going to be where you offer up a couple of different types of cat litter. So you may choose a box that has clumping unscented, and then you may offer something like the little wood pallets. There's a bunch of different options out there, and the key is going to be to find what your cat has a preference for. Now, also as a little tidbit here, some cats that have a tendency to try to go to the bathroom on the carpet may have a preference for the softer feeling litters. So if you have a cat that's doing that, you want to try to find a litter that's got the finer grains in it, like smaller little pieces. That way it's softer on their feet and mimics that carpet feel. So that might help you there. But keep in mind that there are a lot of options out there, and cats definitely have their favorites. So once you find what your cat likes, try to stick to it. Avoid switching types of litter, as that can cause your cat to be really stressed and could actually jumpstart some of these behavioral problems where they go outside of the box. And now I also see fairly frequently cats that poop on top of the litter. So if your cat is pooping on top of the litter and not burying it, that could actually indicate that it doesn't really like how the litter feels in its feet. So if you have a cat doing that, you might want to try offering up a couple of different types of litter for it to try. More often than not, when people come in that say, oh, my cat's pooping outside of the box, it started as the cat pooping on top of the litter and then eventually progressed to the point where the cat was like, you know what, I don't like my box at all. I'm not even going to bother to go in there in the first place. So if you're experiencing that problem where the cat's not even bothering to cover it up, you might want to switch the type of litter so that way you get a different texture for them to be standing on. They should want to be digging in it. That's a natural behavior for them. So if they're not digging, they probably don't like how that litter feels. So now that we've covered some of the litter box basics, it's time to go a little bit deeper into the specific boxes available. So here I have your standard covered litter box. So we have a base, the little door for the cat to go into, and then of course the cover. Some cats do like covered litter boxes, but I do tend to find that most of them don't actually like the covered boxes. Some of the problems that I see with this one in particular is that the base is pretty high up, so your cat would have to step pretty high in order to get into this box. It also has to then go through this door, which can be very intimidating for some cats, and then it's entering this dark space inside. The other problem with the cover is that it can be very confining for cats, and most of them don't end up liking that. However, it is very convenient from an owner standpoint. Everything's kind of packaged up into this one container. It's got a nice handle on there so you can move it around easy. The mess is all contained inside. So if you have a cat that likes the covered litter box, by all means use it. But if you're trying to find one that your cat might like, don't be surprised if it doesn't actually like the covered litter boxes, because a lot of them don't. But again, some of them do. So if you're doing what I mentioned earlier in offering a litter box buffet, it's completely appropriate to offer one of these boxes, but make sure that you're offering plenty of uncovered boxes as well, because the majority of them don't end up liking this. But again, if your cat does like the covered boxes, by all means use them. Now here we have more of our standard litter box. So this is actually an extra large size one. And if you look in comparison to this covered box, the sides are actually much shorter. So this is going to be a lot easier for your cat to step into. It's pretty big as well, so there's plenty of space in here. It's uncovered, so your cat's not going to feel quite as confined. I also like that this box has a decent width in addition to length. So for those cats that like to go in and turn around, you're going to have more wiggle room for them to be inside of this box. So overall, this is a pretty good box for most cats. But remember, you want your box to be 1.5 times the length of your cat. So the average cat is going to fit nicely in here, unless of course you've got one that's really, really big. Now, next to this for comparison, I have your standard size cat litter box. So if we compare it to the extra large one, it's actually not as long, so we do have less space. This could be, though, a very good option if you have a smaller cat, because not every smaller cat wants as big of a box. Some of them actually do like the bigger boxes, but if your cat is smaller and can fit in here just fine, this is a completely reasonable option. The other thing that's really nice about this box in particular is the side profile. So if you see, it kind of divots down in the front there. So we've got the higher sides in the back to make sure that we can still get plenty of litter depth in the box, but it tapers down so that your cat doesn't have to step over quite as high of a height. So in comparison to this extra large one, we do actually lose a little bit of the height in the front, which can be really nice if you have an older cat that has some mobility issues and maybe needs something that it can step into a little bit easier. But don't be concerned if you have a cat that has mobility issues and is maybe too big for this box. There are actually other options available. So one thing that I like to use, and it's going to sound a little bit weird, but it's actually fine to use an under the bed storage bin. So if you compare this to the extra large one, we've got, similar width, a little bit narrower for this one, but there are wider ones available, but it's a lot longer. So if you have a longer cat, this can be a really good option for you to make sure that the cat has a big enough box. But if you don't have a longer cat, if you really don't need all this space, this can still be a really good option for cats with mobility issues. So you can still fill this whole back section, so you're essentially having the same amount of litter as you would in this extra large litter box. And you can actually then keep this front section free of litter. And then what you can do is you can cut a hole in the front part of this box to essentially make a little doorway. So if you have a cat with mobility issues, it can then just walk straight in, walk up the litter, use the box, and walk out without ever having to stand and step up over any ledge. So this can be a really good option for those longer cats, or those cats that maybe have more advanced joint disease and need something a little bit different to help them get into the box. So this is a really good option for those cats. So if I was trying to do a litter box buffet that we discussed earlier in this episode, offering all 4 of these would be a completely reasonable choice. So you've got your standard cat size litter box, some shorter edges. We've got a much bigger under the bed storage bin. Maybe we've cut a doorway out for it. We've got our routine extra large litter box. And then we're still doing that covered box just in case your cat is one of the ones that prefers this. So all in all, we're looking for high variability so we can make sure that we appeal to your individual cat's preferences. So offering all of these is ideal for when you're doing a litter box buffet. Now, if your cat likes all of them, you can put them in different areas of the house and make sure that your cat always has options. Or if your cat only likes one of them, maybe get more of that kind. That way you're catering to your cat's needs. But definitely a lot of variability out there. And of course, don't be afraid to experiment. So under the bed storage bin, obviously not labeled as a litter box, but completely reasonable to use it. So there's plenty of options out there. And keep in mind that the sky is the limit. It doesn't have to be labeled as a litter box for you to be able to turn it into one. I actually know someone that even uses like a little kitty toy swimming pool in her basement for her cats. That way they have plenty of room. It's got fairly low sides. They never feel confined, and it works great for her. So don't be afraid to experiment. You really can't do it wrong as long as you keep options open for your cat. So in summary, cats can be very particular about their litter boxes as well as the actual litter itself. So please let me know how it goes when you guys try some of these tips at home. And if you have any questions, please leave it below in the comment section. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up below, and please subscribe to my channel as well. It lets me know that these videos are making a difference and are important to you guys. Thank you for joining me today. This has been another episode of Everyday Vet, and I'm Dr. Megs.